So I started a softball team full of schizophrenics that were on crack. I know that sounds like the start of the joke, but I really did. Around 1996, I worked at the Robert Young Center in Rock Island, Illinois. At that time, it was about the third largest mental health facility in the state. I started off performing different mental health evaluations in the ER and talking with psychiatrists and consulting with them. Eventually, I moved over to the MESA program, which is an adult program for mentally ill substance abusers. They were duly diagnosed. And from there, had a team of about 5 of us, and we were jammed into this little office. It took time to kind of build those relationships with my clients because most of them thought I was a cop at first. And, none of them had a good relationship with law enforcement. Not to mention they were paranoid to begin with. I also had to develop a relationship with the administration if I wanted to implement the ideas I had for this group. And that was going to take their approval, and that also was going to take time. So one day I was speaking with one of my clients over there and found out that she had a full ride softball scholarship to UCLA. This is what led me to my ingenious idea of starting a softball team. It wasn't easy. Not all the clients got along because they usually were high on something. We had to ensure that they were on their medications. We had to secure softball equipment, find a van to get them to the practice, secure a softball diamond. At the end of the season, we finished 1-0. So, which then led to my volleyball team comprised of schizophrenics that were on crack. After a few fights and a couple of chairs thrown across the court, we ended up finishing that season 1-0. Point is, they never would have had that opportunity if no one had stepped up or was willing to put in the extra work. To lead a disorganized group and to try to organize them. I thought I was successful just getting them to practice alone, let alone to play one game. So when I was asked to come and speak at the National Honor Society, I started coming up with some different ideas and topics on what I wanted to discuss to help me be successful. Have a routine, get organized, be disciplined, have a positive attitude. And when I was telling Tracy this, she shot all those ideas down. She said, those are the same boring ideas that Jason probably talked about here last week. These kids are the National Honor Society, and they're already doing these at some capacity or other. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't be here tonight. So, what advice can I give to the top students in Logan, Iowa? And Logan-Magnolia? Well, then I reached out to Jason. He told me, come up with some stories, try to tie it in with the pillars of the National Honor Society, and talk about your life a little bit. So I said, I can do that. So then I started kind of throwing out some stories to Tracy. Maybe I should talk about when I was evaluating this lady with multiple personality disorder. She was a scared little girl at one point. Another time I went in there, she was a hooker. That was pretty interesting. I could talk about my experiences going into the slums and crack dens, trying to find my clients. Or probably the most nerve-wracking one I had was when I worked with the Department of Human Services and I had to go remove an infant from an apartment complex that was the known gang leader and the drug dealer. So that was a lot of fun when all of his neighbors opened up the door and started yelling profanities at us and throwing our items and garbage at us while we had a kid with us. So I told Tracy those stories. She said, what's the lesson in that? And the lesson is, I've got a lot of good stories. So if you want to hook up with me later, I'll fill you in on some of them. But Tracy asked, what do I want to leave you guys with? And it came down to character and networking. Grades are important, and your teachers are going to hate hearing this, but they're not the most important thing. Another factor that's just as important, if not more, would be your networking. That's something you guys should always be developing and to prepare for the future, which is what you guys are doing right now. It doesn't happen overnight, and a good networking system will continue to grow for years. What about character? Well, Albert Einstein said, what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. One of the most important character traits a person can possess is moral integrity. Integrity is what you guys do when no one is watching. You're doing the right thing all the time, even when it might not work out to your advantage. Your character will heavily influence the type of network you grow and how strong it will be. So right now, your network is gonna be your coaches, your teachers, your friends' parents. Your network is gonna be through your activities, how involved you are in the community, in school. I grew up on a farm in Clarence, Iowa. It's a small town on the other side of the state, along Highway 30. It's about the same size as Logan, same school. I attended Clarence Loudon High School, which is no longer there because now we consolidated, we're in North Cedar. I was active in sports, music, student council, drama. I was involved in 4-H and active with the church. I put myself out there and tried different things. I got involved with the community and I made a lot of connections. From there, I attended the University of Iowa. Go Hawks! I graduated there with a degree of social work, which I just kind of fell into. Fast forward about 8 years, I found myself moving to Western Iowa, kicking and screaming because my wife was from around here. I knew nobody out here outside of her family, and my network out here was nothing. I was going to have to start from scratch. So, again, what type of activities or what am I involved in? Didn't know a lot, coming straight here, started going to church, okay? We attended St. Anne's Church, and at that point, I met this woman, Amanda Shear. Some of you guys might know her, some of you might not. She wanted to start a mom's group. Well, I was the only Mr. Mom there. There was about 4 or 5 parents, and we would go to the parks, libraries, people houses. I also met her husband, Kelly. Kelly Shear used to own and be on the board for Longview Nursing Home and Rose Vista Nursing Home. So we got together, we would go out to eat, the parents and the husbands, and I got to meet them. Over time, Kelly started a hospice program, Generations Hospice. And he asked if I would be interested in being a social worker for him. I've never worked with people with terminal illness. I've never worked with anybody in hospice in that capacity. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but we've always told the kids, you can't be afraid to try new things, even if it's something as small as simple as food. So from there, I started working and doing some psychosocial evaluations with the hospice program. I met Marcia Pitt there. This is where I was going to throw in a little height joke, but I didn't want to be insensitive to Cora over there, so. So later, Marcia and I were working together, and she reached out to me, and she said, hey, the social worker over at Rose Vista is going to be retired, or going to be leaving, and she's been there for 20 years. And she didn't ask me to apply, she said, you need to go apply. Well, I had a meeting, I set up a meeting and went over there, and one of the people on the board was Noel Shear. Well, I had met Noel Shear through Ava. Ava was involved with the Express basketball team and played there for 3 or 4 years during the summers with Noel's daughter. So that's when I first got to meet Noel and his family. So when I went in there, I was thinking this is more of a meet and greet. Okay, would they be interested in me applying to an interview? And as we got to talking, I stopped them and I said, the way you're talking, it sounds like you're actually offering me this job. And they're like, oh yeah, we are. I hadn't even given them a resume. I hadn't talked with them. I hadn't filled out an application. I asked Noel, and he said, we're pretty much offering this to you because of how highly Kelly had talked and spoke about you. So now I'm the director of social services over at Rose Vista. About a year later, we started looking for a new director of nursing. Noel came up to me and asked me about this applicant, Carrie Perkins, sitting right over there, whom I met Carrie through Ava, going to school and playing sports with Emma. I helped coach some of the little leagues with Aaron and Chris and Shad and Rusty and all those guys. That's how I first got to meet Carrie, all right? So Noel came up to me, what do you think about this person? I highly recommended Carrie. I said it would be in Rose Vista's best interest to interview her. And now, because I met Amanda Shear in church 15 years ago, Emma Perkins' mom has a job. So you never really know when or how those relationships you develop are going to benefit you in the future, or how these connections are going to intermingle or cross paths with one another. I mentioned earlier about not being afraid to try new things. You seniors, you've got so many of these opportunities are going to be facing you right after high school. Going to college, going out in the workforce, you're going to have so many opportunities to try new things. Do not be scared to do that. Abraham Lincoln, in his Gettysburg Address, said, "You learn more from failure than from success. Don't let it stop you. Failure builds character. Develop success from character." So much of life is through trial and error. One of my best friends from Davenport, he kept trying to bug me to do triathlon. I was like, I don't want to do any of that. Maybe later. But eventually I gave in. The very first triathlon I did was in Davenport. And I was ready, and I had trained pretty hard for it. And when it was my turn and that buzzer went off and I hit that water, I got about 10 yards before I stood up and was puking out about half a gallon of water. It was one of the most miserable experiences I ever had. But no matter how hard I trained, I wasn't prepared for the actual competition until I actually did the competition. That was something I couldn't get ready for. And that led to the kids' triathlon eventually. Initially, I just wanted to do it as a team building experience for the senior girls, the girls that we were helping coach, just trying to get them to bond closer together. Then there were a lot of parents that kind of started reaching out, hey, I heard you might be doing this. Do you mind if my kid joins in? And then Candy Wallace reached out to me. She's like, we need to do this. She really pushed me. She said, I belong to a group of a triathlon club. We can get them as a lot of volunteers to help lead these kids. So Tracy, who was my biggest support ever, she gave me a lot of ideas, gave me some tips, said, you're going to need to raise a lot of money for this. And that's where my networking really flourished in the little bit I could offer this community. As far as I know, nobody's ever had a triathlon set up here. And we had a good going for about 7 years until COVID got in the way. But through all that fundraising, I met all these people through volunteering, through school, through coaching, through going to church, through doing different activities in the community. And it was a lot easier asking them for money for this triathlon, knowing that I've already donated a ton of my time for their activities or their organizations. There was a ton of work that went into it, and if it wasn't for the volunteers, that triathlon would not have gone on. We had a lot of ups and downs with it. We had to find some interesting ways around the problems that we were faced with every year. I'd listen to the parents, I'd listen to the volunteers, and we'd start tweaking it here and there to make it what it was. And I'm really proud of how that came out, but again, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have volunteers. So, when you guys get a chance, you're not necessarily at that point yet, give back to your community. You guys get older, start giving time to the community, because otherwise those programs aren't going to happen. So what are some of the best practices or lessons that I learned throughout my life? 3 things I want to leave you guys. Commit to personal growth. Continuously seeking new experiences, knowledge, and skills to expand your perspective and improve yourself. Always improve yourself. Number 2, lead by example and consistently model the behavior and values you expect from your team and those around you. Also, be willing to admit mistakes, get feedback, and continuously learn and improve. And finally, I think this is the most influential one for us. Surround yourself with positive people. Positive people are contagious. They're going to help push you to do some great things. You guys have so much potential and hope, and you've already accomplished so many things. It's amazing to all of us parents what you guys have done and how successful your kids are already. People on this stage right now, you guys have made it in your career so far, your school career. You guys have made it to state basketball, track, cross country, wrestling. Wyatt's a 3-time state champ, and he's probably one of the most modest kids I've ever met. You guys have been to state speech. Some of you guys have made it to all-state speech. Jazz band, who's actually going to be fighting for a state championship here in a few weeks. Concert band, you guys, relatively what Albertson said, you guys won state your freshman year. If it wasn't for COVID, you guys would have been performing. You only won 18 to do that. BPA, how many of you guys are in BPA right now? You guys are going to nationals, right? One of you opened for Foreigner last summer. That was pretty impressive. Some of you guys are going on to college to play basketball, football, softball, and that's just that morning side. Grant, we don't even know where you're going to be going yet, do we? Iowa. I know I'm forgetting some of you guys' accomplishments. There's so much up here in everybody usually starts getting glassy-eyed right around now. So, Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. All of you guys are still learning and growing, therefore you can keep getting better. Which means you guys will continue doing great things, and I hope you will still have that drive to learn and grow for many years to come. Nothing gets accomplished by sitting on the sidelines. Life is about experiences and what you do with those experiences. And more importantly, the people you meet through those experiences. Often, it's the people you meet along the way that will present you with opportunities in the future.